From college send-offs to retirement dreams, life is filled with many important milestones. And making sure you have a plan in place to protect the people you love can give you confidence for whatever comes next. State Farm Life Insurance can help protect your family's financial well-being through life's milestones. Your State Farm agent can help you choose flexible coverage you can adjust as your family's needs change. Contact your local State Farm agent today. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
The world of business is constantly evolving, and Comcast Business keeps you in step with secure AI-backed networking in more than 100 countries, powering 90% of the Fortune 500 and millions of small businesses. And behind it all, thousands of experts answering your call at 2 a.m. like it's 2 p.m. One partner, that's it, powering how business gets done for companies around the globe. When you add it all up, no one does business like Comcast Business.
At Strayer University, we help students like you go from will I to why not. For over 130 years, we've been innovating higher education to make it more affordable, accessible, and attainable so you can reach your goals. Go from thinking, can I, to yes, I can, and keep striving. Visit strayer.edu to learn more. Strayer University is certified to operate in Virginia by Chev and has many campuses, including at 2121 15th Street North in Arlington, Virginia.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for standing by, and welcome to the Lucid Group First Quarter 2026 Earnings Conference Call. Please be advised that today's conference call is being recorded. I would now like to turn the conference over to your speaker for today, Nick Twork, Vice President of Communications. Please go ahead.
Thank you, and welcome to Lucid Group's First Quarter 2026 Earnings Call. Joining me today are Silvio Napoli, incoming CEO, Mark Winterhoff, our interim CEO, and Taoufiq Boussaid, our CFO. Before handing the call over to Silvio, let me remind you that some of the statements on this call include forward-looking statements under federal securities laws. These statements are based on various assumptions, whether or not identified in this communication, and on the predictions and expectations of our management as of today. Actual events or results are difficult or impossible to predict and may differ due to a number of risks and uncertainties.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Kilowatt, a podcast about electric vehicles, renewable energy, autonomous driving, and much, much more. My name is Bodhi, and I am your host. And on today's episode, we are going to be obviously talking about Lucid's Q1 2026 earnings call. And I'm kind of trying to keep my voice down because I'm losing it. So we have a long way to go in this earnings call, and I don't want to, by the end, just be completely fried in the voice department. So if I sound subdued or overly quiet, I'm trying to save my voice. Before we jump into our earnings call, I would like to thank a new patron, and that is Jonathan. Jonathan, thank you so much for supporting the show. I do owe you an email. Yesterday was very busy, but I will get it to you. But I really appreciate it. We live in a world where things are increasingly more expensive. So I do appreciate that whenever somebody takes the time to contribute some of their hard-earned money towards the show, it really means a lot. So Jonathan, thank you so much for that. And thank you to all of our patrons who support the show as well. Jonathan, I will send you a proper thank you later this afternoon. But thank you again for supporting the show. If you want to support the show, you can go to supportkilowatt.com, and then on that page, you'll be forced. You'll see two choices. You're not forced to support the show. You'll see two choices. You can support the show via Supercast, or you can support the show through Patreon, and it gives you links to both. All right, let's go ahead and start this show. We're going to start off with Silvio Napoli. I hope I'm saying his name right. We're going to start with his opening remarks. He is going to be the new CEO. He's not the CEO yet. So let's go ahead and start with those opening remarks.
This is my first earnings call with Lucid, and as already had the opportunity to share with many of you, I'm extremely pleased to be here and part of the Lucid team. With not even a month with the company, I'm still at a very early stage, so I'll keep my remarks brief. Let me start by reiterating why I'm here. Lucid brings together state-of-the-art technology, a premium product platform, and a unique opportunity to build a strong, enduring position in a transforming industry. And that combination is compelling. That is the reason that brought me here. Today, 3 weeks into the journey, I'm even more convinced that this is the case. In my first days, I've had the opportunity to meet with our teams in Newark, headquarters, and in some of our key markets. In fact, on the very first day, I traveled to visit a factory in Arizona, the heart of Lucid. Last week, I traveled to Saudi Arabia to witness a strong brand recognition in this fast-growing market and to see firsthand the progress of a new factory under construction. As you know, this manufacturing center is an essential part of our commitment to drive scale, profitability, and to position Lucid on the world stage. While there, I've also been meeting with employees, shareholders, and with local stakeholders. And everywhere I go, I'm focused on listening and beginning to understand where we are strongest and where we need to improve. And what stands out immediately is the incredible domain competence and outstanding motivation of the Lucid team and the strength of our product. At the same time, it's clear that realizing Lucid's full potential will require sharper focus and consistent execution, particularly around simplification, prioritization, and speed. My near-term priorities are straightforward. Recenter all our activities around our customers, ensure the organization operates with clarity and accountability, focus resources on the highest impact areas, and embed a stronger culture of cost and capital discipline across the business. A central objective over time is to build a more self-sufficient company, one that progresses towards funding its own growth. And that means being rigorous in delivering on our commitments and how we allocate capital to few vital priorities. In simple words, this means making clear choices on where to invest and, just as importantly, where not to. At the risk of stating the obvious, I'm not in the position to comment on results reached prior to my joining. Accordingly, I trust you will understand that today I will not comment on any specifics, including the outlook. My goal over the coming weeks is to deepen my understanding of the business so I can engage more fully with you in the future discussions. With that, I'll turn the call over to the team to walk you through the Q1 results. Thank you.
All right. I mean, that's to be expected. Somebody's going to come in. They've only been there for a few weeks, and now, they have an earnings call to give, and they're not going to really have a lot to say. So I think this is a reasonable thing to come in and say, I'm looking at what we do well. I'm looking at what we need to improve, and making sure that we deliver on our promises. I'm down with that. So we'll have to kind of see how that goes. And we're going to get to kind of the more meat of the matter in our next clip. They don't actually say who's talking here, so I don't want to assume. So we'll just go ahead and listen to the clip, and we'll chat about it on the other side.
Thank you, Silvio, and good afternoon, everyone. Let me start with the key takeaways. We expanded our Uber partnership to at least 35,000 vehicles, raised over $1 billion in new capital, and ended the quarter with a clear cost reduction program underway. The foundation is solid, and we are building on it. We have made meaningful progress on each of these fronts. Among the highlights, first, we expanded our partnership with Uber to provide a minimum of 35,000 robotaxis, up from 20,000 previously announced, and increased their investment to $500 million, up from $300 million, improving our visibility into long-term demand and revenue in a new and growing market. Further reflecting the strengthening relationship between our companies, Sachin Kansal, Chief Product Officer at Uber, has been nominated for election to Lucid's board of directors. Second, we significantly strengthened our financial position, raising approximately $1.05 billion, including $550 million investment from the Public Investment Fund through a private placement, reaffirming their continued support and long-term commitment to Lucid. We maintained approximately $2 billion of undrawn commitment under the DDTL, after drawing $500 million of cash in April, further enhancing our financial flexibility. Pro forma for the capital raise and the DDTL increase, liquidity at quarter end would have been $4.7 billion, providing ample flexibility to continue to support development of our midsize platform and the continued build-out of M2. Third, we continue to execute to deliver scale and profitability, delivering $282 million in revenue. Despite the unforeseen geopolitical tensions and logistic obstacles in the region during Q1, our M2 construction never stopped, and we continue to install capital equipment and work toward start of production. The plan remains to ramp up midsize vehicle production in 2027, and we launched an aggressive cost reduction program targeting cost savings across all areas of the organization in all geographies.
All right. So far, so good. We're bumping up the robotaxi order from Uber from about 20,000 to 35,000. I'm sure most of that's going to come from the mid-sized vehicle that Lucid is going to show off in 2027 or release in 2027. I don't know when they're going to show it off. It's still a little bit early if they show it off now. I mean, that's not unheard of. I mean, they showed off the Air and the Gravity years before they released them. But I think the trend of doing that kind of thing is going away. When you show off your new upcoming vehicle too early, you run the risk of missing deadlines or not completely fulfilling on the promises of what this vehicle can do, or maybe possibly because we live in a nutty place right now with the way the world is going, or the way it's going now. I'm not a doom and gloomer. I do think things will correct, but the way that we're in the short term looking that direction, prices are going up. And if you announced something in 2025 and you're going to release it in 2027 and you announced a price of, let's say, $40,000, it's going to be very hard to hit that target and still keep your margins, right? It's not to say that you couldn't do it initially and lose a little bit of money on each car and then, jack that price up over time. But then people will be writing stories that said the $35,000 car or the $40,000 car that now costs $50,000. So I do think it's a good idea to keep your powder dry and really kind of, you can tease it. And I wish, as a fan, I want to see the specs. I want to see the car that Lucid's planning on building. But I do understand from a business standpoint, like it just adds noise when you don't really need that noise. So it's kind of a long, drawn-out way of saying I can't wait to see their new mid-sized car. Let's see, $500 million investment from Uber. They also are going to put somebody from Uber on Lucid's board of directors, which is great. And they raised about $1 billion. Let's go ahead and move on to our next clip.
Our priority now is consistent and predictable conversion of production into deliveries. Central to our framework to scale and drive profitable growth is the midsize platform. The midsize platform brings Lucid's signature range, efficiency, and driving experience to a much larger TAM and broader set of customers, and is key to unlocking scale, affordability, and improved unit economics. At our recent Investor Day, we provided a clearer view of the future product portfolio, with the expected pricing starting below $50,000, reinforcing Lucid's entry into a more accessible segment of the market. I'm pleased to be able to share that our BOM cost position remains favorable, still tracking below our initial cost estimates. During the quarter, construction on M2 and installation of capital equipment continued, and we remain on track for production ramp-up of the midsize in 2027.
All right. I don't know that this is huge news, but it looks like everything's moving in a positive direction in terms of the midsize vehicle that they're building. They still think they can keep it under $50,000, which is great. Whenever you hear someone say BOM cost, that's the bill of materials. So that's the total expense of all of the raw materials that go into the car, the different components, the different assemblies, everything you basically need to finish the vehicle. That doesn't include marketing or any of the other stuff. That's just the bill of materials. So just in case, that comes up again. Something I forgot to mention at the beginning of this episode is I cut these earnings calls up and I try to keep the original message as intended. I don't try to, edit in a way that makes one company look bad or another company look better or any of those other things. I try to make sure that when I present a clip to you, it is fully explained and easy to understand, and I don't make any changes. There's lots of different things that you can do with editing to make something sound better or worse. I don't do any of that stuff. So just so you know, I've already cut up and left some things out, but I believe with the clips that I'm providing you, you still get the essence of what they're saying because they will say the same thing multiple times. They have a message and they're getting it out. All right, let's go ahead and move on to our next clip, which is going to talk about autonomy.
Turning to our third priority, autonomy. In mid-April, we announced the expansion of our partnerships with Uber, increasing their total investment to $500 million and expanding the planned deployment to at least 35,000 robotaxi vehicles. This represents a meaningful increase in both scale and long-term visibility for the program, which generates a new revenue stream through a partnership approach that enables rapid speed to market in a new and rapidly growing market with minimal capex. I'm excited to share that we have met all milestones so far in our joint project with Nuro to provide autonomous Lucid Gravities to Uber for commercial launch by the end of the year, and remaining milestones are on track. We delivered 75 engineering vehicles, and testing and mileage accumulation is ongoing in several cities throughout the US. Starting in mid-April, Uber and Nuro employees are now able to test the end-to-end customer experience, including ordering a robotaxi within the Uber app and choosing from select destinations for drop-off. Our partners at Nuro have also received approval from the California DMV for driverless testing of the Lucid Gravity in the state, making it one of the only a handful of vehicles that have received such approval. This is a key step in paving the way for launching commercial autonomous operations later this year. Looking forward, we are targeting the following milestones as we track toward commercial robotaxi operations in late 2026. This quarter, Lucid will start our production validation builds, which are intended to reflect our production intent design and some of the key robotaxi features, like exterior beaconing for customers, interior cameras, and consumer interfaces. This build is expected to be completed in Q3 and allows us to begin more comprehensive end-to-end testing with our partners, as well as homologation testing and validation. And following the completion of testing in Q3, we anticipate starting regular production of robotaxi vehicles for commercial sale in early Q4 at M1. As you can see, we are well on our way to achieving our goals with our robotaxi program, and commercial launch is on track for late 2026. In parallel, we continue to expand advanced driver assistance features across our consumer vehicles. Over time, we expect these features to become an increasingly important source of recurring revenue, with subscription-based offerings being launched starting in 2027. In closing, Q1 highlighted areas where we still need to improve execution, and we are taking clear actions to address them. I'd like to close with a few personal words. It has been a privilege to serve as interim CEO. We delivered 2 years of consecutive record quarters when it comes to deliveries until the end of 2025. We ramped the Gravity throughout 2025, resulting in a production increase of about 100% last year. We've navigated real headwinds, and the team's ability to keep moving through them is something I'm proud of. We sharpened and expanded our strategy with a clear and capital-efficient approach to provide leading autonomy solutions both for robotaxis and personally owned vehicles. We made meaningful progress across our partnerships, including expanded commitments from both PIF and Uber. I'm confident in this team, in Silvio's leadership, and in where Lucid is headed. And I'm looking forward to continue to contribute as Chief Operating Officer.
All right. So that was Mark Winterhoff. I mentioned when we first started this, they didn't introduce him. So I wasn't 100% sure who it was. And I didn't want to, I figured it was Mark, but I also did not want to make that assumption and be wrong. So Mark Winterhoff, everybody, let's give them all a hand on the autonomy stuff. If you didn't know, obviously we've talked about this in the past, but Lucid and Uber, the big news is Lucid and Uber are partnering on driverless taxis. What doesn't get reported a lot on is that Nuro, which is a company, autonomous driving company, is providing the sensors and the software to make this all happen. So Uber's providing like the platform, right? And I'm sure this is more complicated than this, but to simplify it down, Uber's providing the taxi platform. Lucid is providing the vehicles, and Nuro is providing the sensors and hardware and software that are needed to make that all work together. So it's a three-way partnership. Some might call it a throuple, but there's actually 3 companies that are all involved in this: Uber, Nuro, and Lucid. Nuro doesn't get the credit it deserves, is kind of what I'm going through here. They have approval for driverless testing in California. This is something that Tesla has not applied for yet, as of May of 2026. So that's interesting. Nuro has approval to start testing these vehicles in California, which is great. And then he mentioned that they're continuing to work on the autonomous driving package for their consumer vehicles. When I drove the Lucid Air and the Lucid Gravity recently, I thought that the Dream Drive, which is what their ADAS package is called, I thought that was pretty good. You know, I had a very limited experience testing it because I only had an hour with each car. You know, out of that 2 hours that I had with each car, I probably spent, 45 minutes to maybe an hour and 20 minutes. I didn't time it using the Dream Drive package, and I thought it was pretty good overall. I don't want to compare it to other systems because I haven't been in a Tesla with full self-driving hardware 4 yet. So, we'll just say that Lucid's doing a good job in this area. So in order to keep this down to a reasonable time, I did not include any of Taufik's the CFO opening remarks, simply because, one, I feel confident we're going to hear about more of this when we get the investor questions, or especially the analyst questions. And 2, again, not something we talk about here. So some of the highlights from that, though, is revenue grew 20% year over year from Q1 2025. So they had about $282 million in revenue in Q1. However, they did have a net loss of around $1 billion. They produced 5,500 vehicles. They delivered 3,093 vehicles. And part of the delivery problem, part of the delivery numbers had to do with a stop sale on the Lucid Gravity in February. Lucid has corrected that issue, and they are moving forward. They're also going to be changing the way they report vehicles that are produced versus how they were doing it in the past. And really, I don't think this changes anything for us, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. So,
From college send-offs to retirement dreams, life is filled with many important milestones. And making sure you have a plan in place to protect the people you love can give you confidence for whatever comes next. State Farm Life Insurance can help protect your family's financial well-being through life's milestones. Your State Farm agent can help you choose flexible coverage you can adjust as your family's needs change. Contact your local State Farm agent today. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Modern enterprise. That's a lot of moving parts. Comcast Business helps you orchestrate it all. With SD-WAN working at scale to keep 150 hospital locations connected and working as one. Plus SASE and Zero Trust security, protecting financial data across a bank's 2,000 branches. And AI-powered networking that optimizes traffic across 5 continents. No one does business like Comcast Business.
You've never been one to settle. Stand down or stand still. You're a lifelong learner, energized by excellence. There's a fire inside you can't ignore. You've got competition to outrun, momentum to build on, and your own high standards to meet. Stop now? Not a chance. At Capella University, we help you catch what you're chasing because you've always had the drive. Now, go earn the degree. Capella University. What can't you do? Visit capella.edu to learn more.
Next up, we have questions from retail investors.
When is Lucid going to turn a profit? What is the plan?
At our Investor Day, we laid out a clear path to profitability. The target is gross margin break-even in the midterm, yielding toward the mid-teens by late decade. And on cash flow, we expect to reach positive free cash flow on a similar horizon. The levers to get there are straightforward. It starts with improving fixed cost absorption as volume grows, continuing to bring down bill of material and manufacturing costs, scaling Gravity, launching the mid-size platform, and developing higher margin recurring revenue from software, ADAS, and autonomy. On the mid-size platform specifically, this is a meaningful expansion of our addressable market, and importantly, it has been designed from day one with cost, scale, and manufacturability at its core.
Man, was that straightforward? was that? I mean, if every single car company just took that advice of lowering the bill of materials, manufacturing at scale, I didn't hear creating demand in there. They just assume that people are going to want to drive the Lucid Gravity, which is nice. Don't get me wrong. But also, there's only a certain amount of people that can afford that car. I do think the path to profitability is straightforward. However, it's not easy. It's not just as easy as saying we're going to bring down the bill of materials. It's not just as easy as saying we're going to improve scale. Like you have a new platform coming up, and every new platform has issues, and it takes time to ramp. So I do think Lucid's going to be successful because they have a big giant piggy bank called Saudi Arabia, or the Saudi Wealth Fund, or the PIF, Public Investment Fund. Give me a second. In that regard, they're the biggest supporter of Lucid. They're also the biggest investor. They own something like 66% or something like that, something close to that. Actually, let me look, because that's probably how much of Lucid does Saudi Arabia own. Let's see here. Looks like 64%. But we can just say 60%. They own the majority. They're the biggest investor. And you know what? I'm happy that Lucid, or Saudi Arabia, the PIF, stepped in and basically saved this company, because I don't know if they would be around if the folks from Saudi Arabia hadn't decided to make these big investments into the company. They may not. Lucid's not been profitable. They have had issues with delivery. They've had issues with production. Early on when the Lucid Air was coming out, like there was all over social media, drivers would be really frustrated because they'd be waiting to pick up the cars so they can deliver them somewhere else. And because of production problems and logistics problems and all this other stuff, the drivers are just sitting there not making any money because they're waiting for Lucid to figure their stuff out. That's not to say they don't have it figured out more now than they did then. They've definitely made progress, but Lucid made a lot of very big mistakes early on, which had they not had the support of Saudi Arabia, they most likely would not have survived. So, the fear or the rumors of it being taken private, Lucid being taken private, it's not that far. Lucid already owns Saudi Arabia already owns 60% of Lucid. We're not that far away from 100%. So, yes, it's a straightforward path to profitability, but it is not an easy path. And I think that his answer, while again correct, I'm not a business person, but from my very infantile way of seeing these things, that is the path to profitability. However, it's not accounting for you're building a new platform. There's lots of weird stuff going on in the world. You happen to have a factory in Saudi Arabia, and we have this whole thing going on with Iran, and you're an American company, although you're kind of not. You're an American company in Saudi Arabia with this factory. It wouldn't, well, I'll say this. I wouldn't be surprised if Lucid and their partners didn't have a plan for this already. There's just a lot. There's just a lot that goes into this. And if you could just say, here's our path forward, and that meant that you were profitable, then that's awesome. But that's not how that works. There's just a lot of unforeseen possibilities. All right, that completes our retail investor questions portion of the show. This earnings call was only 45 minutes long. It wasn't very long. And I have a theory that the quarter didn't go as well as a company wanted it to, and it isn't Lucid specifically, it's any company. If the CEO is monopolizing the conversation for, let's say, 20 minutes, and then the CFO gets on and he gives his opening remarks for 15 or 20 minutes. Well, that doesn't leave very much time for analyst questions, because those are the hard ones. So then maybe they take a couple of retail questions, and then they round out the hour with analyst questions. And that's what Tesla did. I think Tesla had about 15 minutes-ish of analyst questions at the end of their last earnings call. It might have been a little bit more, but it wasn't a lot. They took a lot of retail investor questions, which I would argue there's value in doing that, because the retail investors are the people that are actually investing in your company, and they have questions, and you should answer those questions. In my opinion, Lucid hasn't said a whole lot this earnings call so far when it comes to how their business is going. Now, that might very well change when we get to the analyst question, which is next, but they really hit hard on the autonomy portion of things, like the Uber Nuro Lucid partnership, or throuple. They hit hard on the mid-size platform and scaling up Gravity, and that's a common theme, but that's about it so far. Bringing down cost. All the companies want to bring down cost. They want to find efficiencies where they can find efficiencies. That's all there, but I haven't heard a lot of substance beyond just that little bit that they're bringing us here. So let's kind of, maybe I'm wrong. If you heard something that maybe I missed, let me know. Bodie, BODIE at 918digital.com. All right, let's jump into our analyst questions and kind of see what rises to the top.
Our first question comes from the line of Michael Ward with Citigroup. Your line is open.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Can you share any volume targets for M2 for 2027? It sounds like it's going to be a gradual type launch throughout the year. And I'm just wondering if the launch is better than expected, does that liquidity take you into 2028?
The targets on the volume we actually revealed at the Investor Day, and they have not changed.
Right.
So
okay.
They have not changed. No. We're really laser focused on that ramp.
All right. Normally, I would not include that in the earnings call. I would include that in the show, right? But we got a laser focused. And for those who have been listening for a long time, Peter Rawlinson, which was the former and original CEO of Lucid, used to say laser focused all the time. They are laser focused on everything. Honestly, it didn't seem to matter what question was asked of him. They were laser focused on that particular problem. The reality is you can't be laser focused on everything unless you have a very inefficient laser. So, yeah. So I threw that in. I left that in as an homage to Mr. Rawlinson.
From college send-offs to retirement dreams, life is filled with many important milestones. And making sure you have a plan in place to protect the people you love can give you confidence for whatever comes next. State Farm Life Insurance can help protect your family's financial well-being through life's milestones. Your State Farm agent can help you choose flexible coverage you can adjust as your family's needs change. Contact your local State Farm agent today. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Modern enterprise. There's a lot of moving parts. Comcast Business helps you orchestrate it all. With SD-WAN working at scale to keep 150 hospital locations connected and working as one. Plus SASE and Zero Trust security, protecting financial data across a bank's 2,000 branches. And AI-powered networking that optimizes traffic across 5 continents. No one does business like Comcast Business.
Let's move on to the next question.
Okay. And then the second thing I would ask is, as it relates to the robo-taxis, are the volume deliveries to Uber depending on them getting certified, or is there some sort of a schedule for those volume numbers to start to accelerate?
Well, it's basically actually Nuro getting the certification. As we just mentioned, they make a very good progress on that. So we are on track. With this, I mean, still you have to have final certification to be able to do this. For instance, when we start in the Bay Area here in California, but so far, all the development and the certifications are moving as we expected.
I had to listen to this a couple of times, and I think I understand what he was saying. At first, I didn't think he answered the question. I thought he was being maybe a little pedantic about, well, it's a Nuro, but still not answering the question. But it sounds like the deliveries are based on Nuro getting certification, and that's how they're basing the deliveries, not based on at this day you get X amount of robotaxis, and then 6 months later you get another tranche of robotaxis. It sounds like as long as Nuro is working these certifications through local governments, then Lucid is able to provide the vehicles for that. All right, let's go ahead and move on to our next question.
Just maybe the first one, could you maybe talk more about the sales partnerships, which I guess will be very important, especially as you introduce the mid-sized vehicle. You mentioned one in Europe.
Yeah, I mean, what we're doing there is we're basically extending our approach there from a pure direct-to-consumer model into also partnering either with dealerships in an agency model, for instance, within Germany, so in areas where we already have a D2C network, or with importers in new markets that we are entering right now. And we are in the midst of all this process, and recently launched the first agent in addition to our D2C outlets in Germany, which gives us from one day to the other 2 additional cities to cover. And we have numerous LOIs. I think the recent number is like 12 LOIs that are, we're pushing forward and hopefully get to a contract situation and launch very, very soon. But it allows us to much faster grow within the areas and the countries we're already in, for instance, in Germany or in the Netherlands, or expand into new countries through an importership, where you then use existing infrastructure and existing business relationships of those importers to scale much faster.
He didn't put a lot of emphasis on dealers, like auto dealers, not drug dealers, but he didn't put a lot of emphasis on automotive dealers. I don't know why I'm going down this direction. I'm so sorry. I'm starting to get silly. I got to reel it in, otherwise I'll get myself in trouble. But they didn't put a lot of emphasis on dealers, and the ironic thing about this, right, is Lucid and other companies, startups, are fighting here in the United States to not go through dealers. And you know what? I totally support that. But I think we do have to recognize that there are definitely roles, such as service, that dealers can play. But also, they have the network. They can get cars from point A to point B. This kind of makes sense. So I would imagine that those partnerships will, as Lucid finds more success, maybe fade a little bit. But yeah, I think that was an interesting question and an interesting answer. I don't think they want to do that here in the U.S., but definitely somewhere like Europe where they don't have as big of a presence, that seems like it would make a lot more sense. Moving on to our next question.
Our next question comes from the line of Andres Shepherd with Cantor Fitzgerald. Your line is open.
Hey, everyone. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for taking our questions. Congratulations on the quarter, and just wanted to maybe take a brief moment to thank Mark and congratulate him on all his great efforts over the past 2 years. First question, I just wanted to clarify on the guidance. So just to be clear, you'll give us an update in Q2 regarding the production guidance, as well as the CapEx guidance. But just to be clear as well, the midsize timing, robotaxi timing, and also the medium term goals, those are all on track and unchanged. Just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Well, on the midsize, this is also what we guided before, so that is also subject to the suspension right now. But I think what is important to understand is that what really counts is the ramp up in 2027, and that's what remains unchanged. As I said in the beginning, the volumes that we're looking at is unchanged. On the start of production, that's something that we will guide after review with Silvio and the team then by the end of Q2. Also want to point out that when we talk about the start of production, that is less impactful actually than the ramp. Yeah, I mean, we've seen this. You probably remember, with the Gravity, where we had an SOP, but then we weren't able to ramp as we intended to. And that is something, that we definitely absolutely want to avoid. And that's why we want to review everything and make the right decision for the business.
Yeah, he said SOP there. That's start of production, not standard operating procedure, which is how I always hear that when someone says SOP. But I don't think he's wrong here. I don't think he's lying or anything like that. But I mean, startup production is still pretty important. Ramp is still pretty important. Like, there are so many things that can go wrong in both of those things that stall you. Hopefully, fingers crossed, they're able to weather that a little more successfully than some of the other companies have, including big automotive companies that have been around for hundreds of years. But I doubt it. And I don't want to be a negative Nelly here. I'm just saying, I've been talking about this stuff this year for 10 years as of August. So I'm a few months away from 10 years. And the rosy expectations that sometimes, or maybe I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't say rosy expectations. That's not right. The expectations that are sometimes given are hopeful. And in reality, especially when you're dealing with a company like Lucid, who really doesn't produce all that many cars throughout the year, they might, maybe they were having an issue with, RAM chips and all these other things going on right now. It may be that a company like Apple buys out all the supply and, Lucid can't get theirs now, because if a company had to pick, are they going to make chips for Apple or chips for Lucid, they are going to 100%, even if they have to pay Lucid a fine, they are going to 100% make chips for Apple. And given, that choice. So again, not to say that he's not right in what he says, because he works at a very high level at a car company, and I am sitting in my room, an over air conditioned room. Not bragging, it's just really cold in here with a sweater on. So, just for your information, these things there's going to be problems with the midsize ramp. There's just going to be problems. They'll overcome them. They'll do great, but it's not that simple, and they might not even be able to ramp in 2027. I would be quite surprised if they were at anything that looked like volume production in 2027, to be honest. Okie doke. This next question is actually a really good one. Very few of these questions that I listen ahead on. This one I was doing something else and it just kept playing. So I heard a little bit of this question and I think it's a good question. We'll see if there's a good answer following it.
Wonderful. Okay, that's super helpful. Thank you. And maybe just as a quick follow-up, I wanted to touch again on the second production facility, the one in Saudi. Just given the geopolitical conflict still going on, do you foresee any bottlenecks or any issues to the timeline for the construction there, or is that on track? Just any updates there would be helpful. Thank you.
Well, so far, it is going, and we have never stopped to doing it. We had a few delays when it comes to arrival of equipment to be installed, but our team was able to mitigate that. And on that as well, we will update at the end of Q2. But so far, we haven't seen any impact.
I would want to ask a very, very blunt question in that, are you concerned that the factory could be bombed at some point in time? That's what I would want to know. Like, I hope it's not. Listen, I am not a fan of war, and I'm not a fan of going to war for a lot of different reasons. But the reality is that we are, the U.S. we're into it with Iran. Lucid is technically an American company, and they have a factory that they're building in Saudi Arabia. And Saudi Arabia and Iran don't really get along either. I would honestly hope very much that everybody is able to come together and solve this issue, and so we can all move on and mourn the people who've lost their lives. This all sucks. But that would be a real question that I would ask, because that's a real concern that I have, and I would be shocked that it's not a concern on it's not something on the minds of the folks who are running the company. All right, let's move on to the next question.
Our next question comes from the line of James Picariello with BNP Paribas. Your line is open.
Hey guys, this is Jake on for James. First, could you give us some idea of the split between the Gravity and Air deliveries in the first quarter? And approximately how many units were pushed from the first quarter into the second by the stop sale?
As we said in the past, so the majority of our deliveries are now the Gravity. We don't give a direct projection of that. On the average selling price, you maybe can reverse engineer the math somehow. When it comes to how many sales are being pushed into the second quarter, that's actually a number that I don't have handy right now. The numbers of deliveries and orders rebounded in March significantly, but that exact number I don't have handy.
I think this was a good question. I'm surprised that we're at the end of the earnings call and somebody finally asked it. It's nice to know that you had 5,500 vehicles produced. You delivered 3,093 vehicles. Great. But how many Gravities? Like how popular? Is it much more popular? A little bit more popular? Are you selling 2 Lucid Airs versus all of the rest are Lucid Gravities? I do think that's an important question. And I generally don't understand why these companies aren't like. I can kind of understand why Tesla doesn't split out the Cybertruck numbers, because they're probably truly abysmal in terms of like, especially if they if they took away all of the Cybertrucks that were sold to Elon companies, they're probably not great, right? I can kind of understand why they do that, but in general, like they delivered 3,000 cars. Like, you can say 1,000 of them were Lucid Airs and the rest of them were Gravities. Great. But they're not going to say that. And I don't know why. I don't know what the advantage is to not saying that. If you're like, well, we don't want people to think that the Lucid Air is not selling well. None of your cars are selling well. Neither one of your cars are selling well. You don't, even if 100% of these sales and deliveries were Gravities, your Gravity's still not selling well. It's not selling great. So great car. Really enjoyed my time when I had with one, but not a bestseller. So let's kind of keep all this in, perspective. I don't think it would be a big deal to call out how many. I think that's a reasonable question. All right, that is our Lucid Air. That is our Lucid Motors Q1 2026 earnings call. Bam, 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 bam. Aww. That was my Price is Right sad music. I don't know if this is sad. I think Lucid's going into some good places. I think the mid-size platform is going to be great for the company. It's going to, especially under a $50,000 price point, that's going to make it so that more people can afford these cars. I really enjoyed my time with the Air and the Gravity. Like, it wasn't very much time, but I was like, man, these are really good cars. I enjoyed the Gravity over the Air, but I enjoy sitting up a little bit higher in a car. But the Air was fantastic. It's a big vehicle, and it did not feel, it felt big inside, but it didn't feel like you were driving a big old boat around. It was very sporty. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I want Lucid to succeed. They have great engineers. They have great technology. Their infotainment system is snappy. Dream Drive, which is their ADAS system, is really nice. Comparable, we'll say, to Tesla's Autopilot, probably a little better than Autopilot. They just have a lot of things going for them. Unfortunately, they went hard with the $100,000+ car early on, because they're like, well, that's like in the Tesla model, that's going to pay for the more affordable car. In reality, I don't know that even worked for Tesla, because the Model 3 came out, and I don't think when the Model 3 was out, I don't think Tesla was profitable. So I don't know that there's a lot of myth making there when Elon says, the Roadster paid for the S and the S paid for, or the S and X paid for the 3 and the Y. I don't think that was true, because they weren't profitable for a very long time. Now they're making boatloads of money, but I think that myth making was also kind of the strategy for other companies like Rivian and Lucid and Faraday Future, and you name it. And it didn't necessarily come true, because it turns out these cars are very expensive to build, and they can't build them at volume because not everybody can afford these cars at, even at $70,000, which Peter Rawlinson used to say was, people don't realize how affordable Lucids start at $70,000. And he would say this with a straight face, as if $70,000 is an affordable car. Not that long ago, when I was in my 20s, which was a little bit ago, but it wasn't that long ago, you could buy a house for $70,000. Like, that's a lot of money, $70,000. So it's more affordable than $100,000, but it's still not attainable for a lot of people. So with any luck, they're going to come out with their mid-size platform. That mid-size platform is going to be, a really good car for the price, full of all of Lucid's great technology. And maybe it's even not only a value, but a deal for how much, $49,000 or whatever they're going to charge for it. But my point here, a very long way of saying this, is that more people are going to be able to afford a Lucid. And that is going to allow Lucid to have the opportunity to make more money. But that means that they need to be able to scale. That means that they need to be able to build these cars in volume and not stall because they ran into a production snag or a supplier snag or whatever. Like, there's a lot riding on this. Now, I've said this many, many, many times, is the Lucid has a giant piggy bank in the public investment fund for Saudi Arabia. But that, that's not a forever thing. At some point in time, if they're continuing to lose money and there's no sign that they're going to make money, I'm sure that money tap will turn off. But for now, mid-sized platform, more people can afford it. Hopefully they'll turn a profit. And then as people, as leases come up and as people start upgrading their cars from Lucid's mid-sized platform to other things, that goes into the used market and more people can have EVs with really cool technology. So I think it's, a win for everybody long term. But we'll have to see what happens as Lucid gets everything going and ramping up and all that stuff. All right, everybody, that is our show. That is my rant. I hope you all enjoyed this episode. If you want to email me, it's Bodie, BODIE at 918digital.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn. Just search for Bodie, BODIE, and then Grimm, GRIMM, and you'll find me on LinkedIn. And big thank you to Jonathan for supporting the show on Patreon. And thank you, Jonathan. Really appreciate that. And I hope y'all enjoyed this episode, and I will talk to you soon.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm showing no further questions in the queue. That concludes today's conference call. Thank you for your participation. You may now disconnect.
The world of business is constantly evolving, and Comcast Business keeps you in step with secure AI-backed networking in more than 100 countries, powering 90% of the Fortune 500 and millions of small businesses. And behind it all, thousands of experts answering your call at 2 a.m. like it's 2 p.m. One partner, that's it, powering how business gets done for companies around the globe. When you add it all up, no one does business like Comcast Business.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.